Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We are excited to share the following news. King Charles and Prince William. Heartbreaking confirms the shocking truth of Archie and Lilibet. An exclusive source has said that King Charles and Prince William have confirmed the true lineage of Archie and Lilibet, unveiling the crown's darkest secret that has shocked everyone. This narrative poses a risk of altering the historical account of contemporary monarchy. Following years of conjecture, reticence, and an expanding divide across the Atlantic, the House of Windsor has finally spoken up. In a secret assembly that has reverberated through the halls of authority, King Charles III and Prince William have affirmed a revelation so profound that it alters our whole understanding of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The announcement made inside the ornate confines of the palace verifies that Prince Harry is not the biological progenitor of Archie and Lilibet. The report, supported by incontrovertible DNA evidence, reveals a network of secrets, a persistent prior connection, and a treachery that undermines the core of the royal family. The return. The evening of Prince Harry's return was characterized by a weather pattern emblematic of London, overcast, oppressive, and ominous. The palace gates creaked open that evening, the iron scraping against the stone mirroring the discord among the family. Prince Harry emerged out of the black Range Rover accompanied by his family. Years had elapsed since he last visited these grounds with genuine anticipation of warmth or reunion. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, grasped Lilibet's hand firmly, her knuckles pale against the child's clothing. Archie approached his father, his eyes widened as he saw the imposing stone edifice rising before them into the dusk. Harry inhaled deeply, the frigid air permeating his lungs. He desired for this to succeed. He fervently desired for home to regain its sense of belonging. King Charles extended a personal invitation to them. The letter had come weeks before, inscribed in his father's meticulous cursive script. It addressed themes of family healing and a grandfather's need for proximity to his grandkids while time permitted. Harry repeatedly examined those phrases, seeking concealed meanings, pitfalls, and the political maneuvering that had characterized their previous exchanges. However, all he discovered on the page was a parent who seemed weary and sincere. Thus, contrary to his better judgment, he attended. Within the castle exuded warmth, illuminated by gentle amber illumination that often indicated solace. Personnel traversed the corridors silently, their footsteps subdued by plush carpeting, arranging the assembly area for the family's meeting. This was a private event. There were no cameras, no press contingents, and no rehearsed official addresses for public consumption. This was only familial. That was the commitment made by Charles. Prince William and Catherine. Princess of Wales were the first arrivals. William's demeanor was measured and composed a facade of stoicism he had refined during decades of public service. Catherine smiled at Harry upon their eyes meeting, although it was a feeble smile, one that failed to resonate with her emotions. It was only a politeness. Harry saw the coldness, but remained silent. He had acclimated to the frigid estrangement between himself and his brother. Princess Anne arrived thereafter, her demeanor as steadfast and robust as the wood paneling adorning the walls. She acknowledged Harry with a terse nod and conversed succinctly and courteously with Meghan over the children's itinerary. Queen Camilla arrived last proceeding with understated elegance to position herself beside Charles. She regarded Harry with an emotion he could not really identify, perhaps pity, or a deep, tired melancholy. Harry perceived the peculiar weightiness about the room. It was a palpable pressure. He saw as individuals exchanged glances with one another while deliberately averting their gaze from him. He saw his father positioned in the middle, hands firmly clasped behind his back, his visage etched with a depth beyond mere age. An issue was present. Meghan sensed it as well. She grasped Harry's hand with a hard grip, and he gripped it securely, grounding himself. Archie and Lilibet engaged in play near the floor-to-ceiling window, oblivious to the mounting tension around them, akin to an impending storm. The groundbreaking revelation. King Charles cleared his throat. The sound was little, but amid the acoustic perfection of the drawing room, it resonated like a thunderclap. The room descended into an oppressive quiet. The youngsters seemed to perceive the change in energy and were silent, observing the grown-ups. Charles expressed gratitude to all attendees, his tone subdued and deliberate, devoid of its customary resonance. He articulated that there was a matter he needed to convey, a burden he had borne for an excessive duration. Harry's pulse started racing, a rhythmic thrum in his ears. He gazed at William, whose expression revealed nothing, fixated straight ahead. He gazed at Anne, who was fixated on the floor. He gazed at Camilla, who averted her gaze. Charles proceeded to discuss his condition, namely, the warnings from his physicians about the precariousness of time. He declined, asserting that he would not go from this planet with unspoken secrets. Meghan's grasp on Harry's hand intensified to the threshold of discomfort. Harry had a tightening sensation in his chest. The king recognized his many paternal errors, his gaze ultimately resting on Harry with deep remorse. However, he asserted that he would refrain from the error of silence this evening. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Harry wanted to articulate his thoughts, to inquire about the situation, and to alleviate the oppressive strain. However, his voice eluded him. Charles squared his shoulders as if bracing to bear a huge burden. He asserted that a truth must be articulated before time elapsed. The words lingered in the atmosphere like a poised blade ready to fall. Harry saw the world shift underneath him. He remained unaware of his father's forthcoming response, although he had a grim confidence that nothing would ever return to its former state. Charles continued without interruption. He did not temper his comments or deliver them delicately. He spoke the truth as if it were an injury requiring incision for restoration. Recent DNA analyses, the king said, his voice quavering slightly, have shown that Archie and Lilibet are not biologically connected to you, Harry. He said that the findings were unequivocal and irrefutable. The room fell into complete silence. Harry experienced the words striking him with the force of a physical strike to the abdomen. His lips opened. However, no sound emerged. Next to him, Meghan became pale, the color draining from her cheeks, her hands sliding from his, as if she had lost the power to maintain her grip. Charles persisted, his voice unwavering, but laden with grief. The children's DNA corresponds with that of a male from Meghan's history. Her initial spouse. Meghan inhaled sharply, her breath resonating in the still room. Her palm swiftly covered her lips. Her eyes brimmed with tears immediately, but she remained silent. She was unable to. Harry gazed at her, seeking any sign of denial, horror, or righteous indignation, anything that may render this a falsehood. However, all he saw was remorse. Unadulterated, stark, incontrovertible guilt. Charles proceeded, unyielding at this point. Additional revelations awaited. The king elucidated that Meghan had never completely terminated her connection with her first husband, Trevor Engelson, even during the first phases of her courtship with Harry. The relationship persisted, concealed behind the obscurity of their public existence. Harry recoiled as if propelled backward. His thoughts surged, attempting to assemble recollections, instances, and dialogues. Were there indications? Was he blind? He gazed across the room at William. His sibling remained still, his visage like that of stone. He was aware. Harry was able to perceive it now. His brother had been aware for months, perhaps longer, but remained silent. Harry's voice faltered as he faced his brother. "Were you aware?" William replied softly, his tone without any passion. "I wanted to inform you. However, father instructed me to wait." Harry emitted a harsh chuckle, a sound devoid of humor that approached hysteria. Await what? At this moment, for public humiliation, before an audience, Charles lifted his hand to halt the dispute. He articulated that he had issued this notification to ensure the record remained unblemished prior to the potential misrepresentation of history. The crown must ascertain the truth, Charles said. The succession line must be safeguarded. "These are minors," Harry exclaimed, the astonishment transforming into fury. They are aged 3 and 5. They are not your offspring, Harry, Charles said firmly. The sentences descended like stones into deep water. Megan wept freely, her body trembling. Archie and Lilibet stopped their play and gazed at the grown-ups with wide, apprehensive eyes, perceiving their mother's concern. Charles said that the titles for the children will undergo quick reassessment. They could not maintain places in the line of succession to which they were never entitled. Harry had an internal rupture. He gazed at his father, the guy who had just destroyed his universe in the presence of all those he had ever known. "What is the reason?" Harry murmured. "Why was this not conducted privately? Why could you not have alleviated us from this?" Charles said that he had withheld nothing from Harry throughout his life, shielding him from the truth, had ultimately resulted in their current predicament. He would not start by allowing falsehoods to be seen as fact. Harry faced Megan. She extended her hand towards him, her gaze imploring, but he retreated, creating a physical separation. "Is it accurate?" he inquired. She acquiesced, tears cascading down her visage. "I wanted to inform you," she said. "I made several attempts." "You did not," Harry said bluntly. "The treachery was absolute. The revelation originated not alone from Megan, but also from his father, who opted for this harsh approach to disclose the truth, and from William, who had concealed the knowledge." Harry surveyed the room, seeing the expressions of his family members. Several averted their gaze. Some observed him with compassion. None of them approached to offer him solace. He approached Archie and Lilibet and knelt by them. They were blameless in this matter. Regardless of the blood coursing through their veins, they had committed no wrongdoing. He kissed both of their heads, pausing briefly to savor the fragrance of their hair, then rose. He declared to no specific audience that he was departing. Megan initiated the utterance of his name, extending her hand, but he interrupted her. His voice was frigid, definite, and unidentifiable. Refrain from uttering another word. He approached the door, his legs wobbly, his heart shattered into irreparable fragments. The incomplete romance. To comprehend the significance of this discovery, one needs to reflect on a period long before Prince Harry's involvement in the tale. Years prior to the royal wedding, Meghan Markle was situated at a modest film production office in Los Angeles. The room was filled with crew personnel and helpers hastily completing paperwork, but the tumult subsided at her sighting of him. Trevor Engelson was a producer engaged in the production of low-budget films, endeavoring to establish his niche in Hollywood. He had kind eyes and a disarming grin that made her feel acknowledged in a city where the majority overlooked her. During a lunch break, they engaged in discussion that flowed so effortlessly that neither wanted for it to conclude. He elicited her laughter. She instilled in him a sense of legitimacy about his aspirations. In a matter of weeks, they were inseparable. Their relationship progressed rapidly, driven by youth ambition and the exhilarating sensation of discovering someone who really comprehended the demands of the profession. Trevor facilitated her auditions, transported her to castings, and had faith in her abilities when she had little confidence in herself. Megan had a significant fall. He was her supporter, her companion, and her refuge. They wed at a young age in an exquisite ceremony in Jamaica, accompanied by intimate friends and relatives. The first period was characterized by mirth and nocturnal discussions for the future. They propelled one another forth, certain that in unison they might dominate Hollywood. However, the sector remained unaccommodating to aspirants without connections. Trevor labored extensively. Megan encountered repeated rejections. The invoices accumulated. Subsequently, Megan secured her position on Suits, necessitating a relocation to Toronto. The gap became a barrier. Telephone conversations become more concise. They lived disparate lives bound just by a marriage license and diminishing recollections. The divorce occurred discreetly. There were no theatrical moments or public declarations, merely two individuals acknowledging their emotional distance. However, an internal force inside both individuals resisted total relinquishment. The emotional bond persisted like a specter. Following the divorce, Megan immersed herself in her profession to alleviate the pain of loss. However, late at night, she discovered herself extending her hand towards her phone. Trevor replicated the action. They began communication with brief messages which then evolved into more extensive dialogues. Subsequently, clandestine coffee meetings occurred when Megan returned to Los Angeles. They tried to maintain distance from one another. Trevor engaged in relationships with other women. Megan attended dates with suitable bachelors. Nevertheless, each failure drew them back together. Acquaintances saw the trend but remained silent. The tie between them had not fractured, it had only transformed. There were instances when romance rekindled a protracted supper and a night when past emotions re-emerged. Trevor comprehended her in manners that no one else could. He was acquainted with Megan before her rise to stardom. In his presence she may exhibit disarray and ambiguity. That solace was an addiction she could not relinquish. A prince joins the scene. Upon meeting Harry on that balmy summer evening in Toronto, Megan was captivated. He did not conform to her expectations, lacking formality. He was only a guy with kind eyes and a carefree chuckle. Harry had an inward transformation that night. She was intelligent, self-sufficient, and unhesitant in confronting him. She saw him as an individual rather than a royal. Their relationship progressed rapidly. Harry traveled to see her. Megan adjusted her schedule for weekends in London. Within months, Harry realized his desire to marry her. Megan endeavored to sever ties with her past. She informed Trevor that she was involved with someone seriously. Trevor consented to withdraw despite his heart being shattered. For many weeks, there was stillness. However, long-standing behaviors are the most difficult to eradicate. When the pressures of dating a royal got overwhelming and the public attention seemed like an attack, Megan contacted Trevor. Merely a message. Merely a phone call. Trevor consistently replied. He convinced himself he was being a good friend, while a part of him wished she would recognize her affinity for him. Harry had profound and total infatuation. He made a proposal within 1 year. Megan affirmed her consent, and she was sincere. She desired this existence. However, the royal family was observing. King Charles at the time, the Prince of Wales, saw discrepancies in the time frame supplied by Megan. William noted unaccounted excursions. Palace security reported private phone conversations conducted in subdued voices. Kate informed William that something seemed amiss. Harry, nevertheless, was too enamored to recognize the warning signals. When Megan seemed preoccupied, he attributed the cause to the media. When she required distance, he provided it. He readily placed his trust in others. Megan assured herself that her interaction with Trevor was innocuous. They were only acquaintances. She could navigate both realms. However, secrets tend to proliferate in obscurity. The royal nuptials and the concealed tempest. The wedding was an international spectacle. Millions saw Megan down the aisle of St. George's Chapel. It was a fable. However, inside the royal confines, anxiety was proliferating. Charles had obtained confidential reports from security personnel. Telephone records indicated consistent communication with a number located in Los Angeles. The text communications were encrypted. Megan engaged in phone conversations late at night, distancing herself from Harry. William was the first recipient of the information. Charles summoned him to his office and presented the information. William experienced a constriction in his abdomen. They have no evidence of infidelity, only conjecture. Charles declined to face them without substantial proof, apprehensive that it might jeopardize Harry's newfound happiness. They choose to observe and be patient. Megan had difficulties in the first months of her marriage. The procedure was stifling. In those bleak months, Trevor re-emerged as her vital support. She contacted him during Harry's absence. He attentively listened, provided solace, and ensured she felt acknowledged. Trevor continued to have affection for her. He proposed to go to London. Megan originally declined, aware of the risk. However, the solitude grew intolerable. Ultimately, she consented to see him on a trip she said was for philanthropic endeavors. They convened at a secluded hotel, shielded from the scrutinizing gaze of the media. The dialogue was fervent. Trevor informed her that she may still go. Meghan wept in his embrace, conflicted between her obligations and her past. Although she would subsequently assert that no physical events transpired that day, the emotional connection transcended all marital boundaries. Subsequently, Meghan conceived Archie. The announcement elicited elation globally and sparked anxiety for Meghan. She had not been loyal in her affections. She let Trevor stay. She was now introducing a kid into a marriage founded on secrecy. Trevor resurfaced throughout the pregnancy, extending his congratulations to her. The dialogue intensified. Meghan shared her apprehensions over parenthood. Trevor provided assistance. The delineations become more indistinct. The concealed truth, unrecognized by all Archie, came on a sunny May morning. Harry was elated, radiating pride outside the hospital. However, Charles saw several features immediately upon first holding his grandson: the contour of the eyes and the configuration of the lips. The infant's characteristics seemed to belong to an altogether other individual. William visited and had a similar subdued disquiet. He examined Archie's visage, seeking remnants of Harry, Diana, and the Windsors. He discovered none. As Archie matured, the disparities were more difficult to overlook. His complexion and physique bore little resemblance to Harry. Charles observed attentively throughout familial assemblies. Harry, engrossed in parenthood, perceived nothing. Meghan became ever more protective. She rejected customs that required medical paperwork. She refrained from public christenings. She isolated the youngsters from the wider family. She invoked seclusion. Nonetheless, Charles and William saw a recurring pattern of obfuscation. The anxieties escalated with Lilibet's birth 2 years later. The infant girl was exquisite. Nonetheless, she once again exhibited no likeness to the royal family. The physical disparity was pronounced. Charles embraced his granddaughter, experiencing a profound emotional rupture. He wanted to be incorrect. He passionately wants to think that genetics are merely capricious. However, the royal family commenced discreetly collecting intelligence. Medical reports were examined. Timelines were analyzed. Security documents indicated ongoing correspondence with Trevor. The calls persisted incessantly. Charles compiled a confidential dossier. The evidence was circumstantial, yet increasing. He presented it to William. William perused it silently, his expression becoming increasingly somber. "What actions shall we undertake?" William inquired. "We require certainty," Charles responded. "We cannot implicate her without evidence. Princess Anne and Queen Camilla were included. They concurred. They required irrefutable evidence: the deoxyribonucleic acid examination. An opportunity emerged during a standard medical evaluation for Archie, who had acquired a slight ear infection. Charles requested the discreet execution of supplementary tests. The physician, recognizing the seriousness of the request, posed no inquiries. Samples were analyzed at a laboratory designated solely for the Crown's sensitive affairs. William endorsed the decision despite it causing him considerable distress. The wait was interminable. Charles scarcely obtained any sleep. Upon the arrival of the initial results in a sealed envelope, Charles independently opened it in his study. The statement was stark and disheartening. No biological connection to Prince Harry. Charles seated himself with considerable weight. He requested a second test, utilizing distinct samples conducted at an alternate laboratory. He required unequivocal certainty. 3 weeks later, the subsequent results corroborated the initial findings. No error occurred. Charles resolved to confront Meghan prior to informing Harry. She warranted the opportunity to elucidate. He organized a confidential meeting at Clarence House. Meghan arrived, appearing anxious. Charles presented the evidence, the DNA analyses, the chronology, and the communications with Trevor. He inquired directly whether the children were Harry's. Meghan's defenses disintegrated. She lamented, conceding that Trevor had consistently been a part of her life during the marriage. She admitted that during a challenging time when she and Harry were in conflict, Trevor had paid a visit. She sought solace from him. It occurred multiple times. She had persuaded herself that it was inconsequential because she loved Harry. Upon becoming pregnant with Archie, she opted to believe that Harry was the father. Lilibet experienced diminished uncertainty, she was aware, but she found herself ensnared in an insurmountable deception. Charles listened, his expression a blend of rage and sorrow. "Is Harry aware?" Meghan negated with a shake of her head. "I implore you," she pleaded, "allow me to inform him in private." "That opportunity has passed," Charles stated. "This pertains to the crown. The line of succession must be safeguarded." Section the 8th. The consequences within the palace enclosure. The aftermath of Charles's announcement in the gathering room was tumultuous. Meghan remained immobilized, incapable of articulating any words. The palace staff promptly escorted her to a private room, thereby securing her under supervision. She offered no resistance. She could scarcely walk. Harry stood motionless, resembling a man who had been struck by lightning. Charles convened an urgent family meeting. William, Kate, Anne, and Camilla convened. Harry was escorted to a designated area to address the trauma. Charles acted promptly. "The children's titles are promptly rescinded," he asserted. "They cannot occupy positions to which they are not entitled." William acquiesced, albeit with a weighty tone. "They are blameless," he stated, "yet the regulations are in place for a purpose." Princess Anne communicated with her usual pragmatism. "Meghan should be excluded from all royal events. The scandal will be substantial. We cannot appear to endorse this." Kate remained silent, tears welling in her eyes. She requested to visit Harry. Charles acquiesced. She discovered Harry in a diminutive chamber with a view of the gardens. He was seated in a chair, his head resting in his hands. Kate positioned herself next to him, resting a hand on his shoulder. He remained stationary. He merely inhaled, striving to maintain composure. "We shall provide our support," Kate murmured. "You are not isolated." Harry acquiesced with a nod, but remained silent. The family devised a strategy in the main room. They would issue no prompt statement. They would consolidate their positions. Meghan would be subjected to stringent limitations, prohibited from accessing royal residences and attending official functions. For all intents and purposes, she was eliminated from the family. Harry insisted on meeting Meghan. Notwithstanding security protocols, he remained undeterred. He was required to receive confirmation from her. They convened in a secluded private chamber. Meghan's visage was edematous. Harry's demeanor was frigid, an expression she had never encountered. "Was it accurate?" he inquired once more. Meghan acquiesced, weeping. She attempted to articulate the solitude and bewilderment, yet the words held no significance now. Harry approached the window, deliberately turning away from her. "I consistently sensed that something was amiss," he said softly. "There were instances when your narratives were inconsistent, when you disengaged. However, my affection for you was so profound that I refrained from questioning it." He turned to face her, his gaze devoid of emotion. "I placed my whole confidence in you. The prospects of the Sussexes are now irrevocably compromised. The family is fragmented, perhaps irreparably. The king has spoken the truth, so altering the trajectory of the monarchy indefinitely." As darkness enveloped the castle, one inquiry persisted. Can a man who has forfeited his history, his wife and his children, possibly discover a path forward? For Prince Harry, the protracted journey home has barely just started. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and say goodbye for now.